welcome back to the In 10 Minutes series on the 5 Ways of Thomas Aquinas. This is the second way, the argument from causation. Of the 5 of Thomas Aquinas' 5 ways, this may be the most difficult to decipher. The reason why is that Thomas has such a rich notion of causality that is practically unknown to the modern mechanistic world of thinking, and certain assumptions are often made that are not part of Thomas's way. We will have to spend some time clarifying the terms he uses and the concepts they inspire. For example, Thomas begins by saying, "The second way is from the nature of the efficient cause." The term efficient cause is prominent throughout the argument. This is a term that Aquinas borrows from Aristotle, and is most clearly defined in the Physics. In the text, Aristotle identifies 4 types of causes that are essential if we are going to fully explain what causes an event. The first is the material cause, what something is made of. The second is the formal cause, the form of each cause. The third is the efficient cause, who or what brought it into being. The fourth is the final cause, what is its purpose. So, take the example of Michelangelo's David. Its material cause is the marble. Its formal cause is the statue of David. Its efficient cause is Michelangelo, and its final cause is its beauty. Thomas is saying that he is primarily interested in the efficient cause in this argument. Let us attempt to come to terms with the second way via analysis of a common misinterpretation of the argument, and the criticisms that accompany it. It generally takes this form. In the world, we observe a range of efficient causes. For example, Michelangelo caused the statue of David. Every efficient cause is itself caused by another efficient cause. The chain of causes cannot go back infinitely, because an infinite regress of efficient causes would mean there is no first cause, and thus nothing would exist now. Therefore, there must be a first efficient cause that is not caused by anything else. This uncaused cause is necessary to start the chain of causation, and to explain why anything exists at all. This uncaused cause must be God. At first, this seems fairly intuitive. It describes what we might call a temporal causal chain. For example, a row of dominoes that is set up to be toppled so that it falls in sequence. It requires that a finger separate from the row push the first domino. They then fall one by one. The finger is the first cause. Each domino that falls becomes a secondary cause of the next domino falling, until you have the ultimate effect of the last domino falling and the sequence ending. If we think of the universe in the same way, with all of its various secondary causes and ultimate effects today, we should be able to go back in time through the sequence to the first cause. Perhaps we will want to say that it is the Big Bang, but then the question is asked, what caused that? And the only explanation that we might be able to give is that it must have been caused by God. What should we make of this common interpretation of the second way of proving the existence of God? The first point is that it has received significant criticism. Perhaps the most influential come from philosophers David Hume and Bertrand Russell. Hume, for example, calls the whole system of cause and effect into question. What we rely on when we posit such a system is we make inferences about the world we observe and mistakenly assign a deductive quality to them. Just because we continually observe the cue ball strike the billiard ball, causing it to move in a predictable direction, does not ever give us evidence to conclude that it will necessarily do so. The reasoning will always be inductive, and assuming the existence of a causal chain in this argument renders it invalid. Similarly, contemporary quantum mechanics presents significant challenges to this concept of causal chains. The observation of atomic decay has introduced the notion of indeterminacy to modern interpretations of cause and effect. Whilst probabilistic predictions can be made about the timing of the decay, the process itself appears to be random. So far, it is not looking good for the second way, and when we apply the logical criticisms of Bertrand Russell towards skepticism of infinite regress, it only gets worse. Russell identifies what he believes is a quantifier shift fallacy in the infinite regress reasoning. It goes like this. To say that every effect requires a cause, therefore there is one cause that is required to be the cause of every effect, is like saying that every person has a mother. Therefore there is one mother for all people. If we build a causal chain of mothers who have daughters who became mothers, have more daughters that become mothers, and so on, Even if we were talking about monogenesis, it would be wrong to say that the first mother in the chain is the mother of everyone. Following on from this, Russell asks, why, if infinite regress is problematic, is it not problematic for God? Why does God not require a cause? If it is reasonable to ask for a cause of the Big Bang, it is perfectly reasonable to ask what caused God. And this leads Russell to ask why we cannot just accept the universe as a brute fact, in the same way that this argument asks us to accept God as a brute fact. The final criticism we will introduce is made by both Hume and Russell, as well as numerous others. It is simple. There is no logical contradiction in the concept of an infinite regress. This fact alone is enough to invalidate this formulation of the second way. Let us not be too hasty though. The question remains of whether our formulation of the second way is an accurate representation of what Thomas Aquinas intends. One way of establishing an answer is to look and see if Thomas himself objects to any of the claims it makes. And lo and behold, we find one in the Summa Theologia Prima Pars question 46, article 2, when he says, an accidentally ordered series of efficient causes, such as when a father generates a son and the son generates another son, can go on to infinity, because each cause acts only after the previous cause has ceased. Furthermore, in the previous article he states, nothing prevents something created from always existing, according to the power of the Creator. The only conclusion to be drawn from this is that this commonly rendered formulation of the second way is not consistent with the second way of Thomas Aquinas. So for the rest of this video, we must attempt to present a more faithful rendering. We can account for Thomas's apparent contradictions by understanding an important distinction he makes between accidental causal chains and essential causal chains. Accidental causal chains are what we have been assuming he is referring to. They consist of temporal chains of events where each link in the chain acts independently of the others, like with falling dominoes. Once domino A hits domino B causing it to fall, domino B no longer relies on domino A to continue the causal chain. And this is also true of the first cause in the chain, like if we suppose that God caused the Big Bang. If the Big Bang was brought about in this manner, we would be entitled to suppose that God's work is now done, and he can be confined to the past. Essential causal chains are different. Whilst we can picture an accidental causal chain as horizontal, essential causal chains are vertical. It may help to visualize it as a chandelier. Its distinguishing feature is the reliance that the intermediate cause and the ultimate effect have on the continuing participation of the first cause for their existence. Think of Michelangelo fashioning the statue of David. We can think of it in accidental terms. Michelangelo is the efficient cause of the statue, and the statue persists beyond his efforts. However, we can also think of it in essential terms. Whilst the statue is being fashioned, the causal chain consists of Michelangelo as the first cause, a hammer and chisel as two intermediate causes, and the statue being fashioned as the ultimate effect. If we remove Michelangelo from the causal chain, the hammer, the chisel, and the statue are stripped of any power they would have to be active in the chain. So when we read Thomas's second way, we should read it as referring to essential causal chains. Let us look again at the argument with our newfound understanding of causality. Thomas begins, in the world of sense, we find there is an order of efficient causes. An order of efficient causes, not a temporal order, but a hierarchical one. And although Thomas goes on to say, there is no case known, neither is it indeed possible, in which a thing is found to be the efficient cause of itself. For so it would be prior to itself, which is impossible. Prior here does not mean prior in time. It means prior in significance. For Thomas says, the first is the cause of the intermediate cause, and the intermediate is the cause of the ultimate cause, whether the intermediate cause be several or only one. let us return to the image of the chandelier. This time we can think of it in the context of the argument for the cause of everything. The primary cause is prior to the intermediate causes, not in a temporary sense, but in a hierarchical sense. The intermediate causes depend upon the primary cause. These represent the laws of nature and the nature of each substance that comes into being. The primary cause acts not simply as a cause that brings them about, but one that continues to sustain them, and so, in turn, do we recognize the ultimate effect of a universe of cause and effect that continues to be an act of creation from the primary cause. Now, there is another important feature of essential causal chains that we must comprehend here. It is that causes can only achieve effects in conformity with their causal power. This means that each intermediate cause and ultimate effect can only result in participation with a primary efficient cause that contains the power to bring about such causes and effects. Remember that the hammer and chisel used by Michelangelo to sculpt the statue of David has no power to achieve this effect in and of themselves. They require the craftsmanship of Michelangelo, and without his continued participation in the process and their continued dependence upon them, there can be no statue of David. It is with this picture in mind that we should understand the following claim. If in efficient causes it is possible to go on to infinity, there will be no first efficient cause, neither will there be an ultimate effect, nor any intermediate efficient causes, all of which is plainly false. So what Thomas is saying is that without the power contained in the first efficient cause and its participation in the process of establishing the ultimate effect via the intermediate causes, there can be no causal chain at all. This is why essential causal chains cannot go on to infinity. Therefore, it is necessary to admit a first efficient cause, to which everyone gives the name of God. We should be careful to draw the appropriate conclusions along with Thomas from this causal argument. God is not merely beginning a temporal causal chain of events and retiring whilst the chain unfolds. In fact, his continued participation in the chain is necessary for the chain's continued existence, and we will understand these things more clearly when we come to examine the third and fourth way.